Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. We want to talk. I want to talk a little bit about the meaning of joy or the concept of joy in the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, this book is this kind of entryway for a lot of people, including myself, into the Christian faith because we see in it the struggles of a person who doesn't understand the way life is the way it is. Right? He sees all of these situations, all of these things that are upside down, and he says like, "This isn't right. This isn't how it should be." Right? It shouldn't be that death is this great leveler, that death that we all die. He's harkening back to the Garden of Eden, like before sin and death entered into the world. He's saying like, look, this doesn't make sense. This isn't how it's supposed to be. And I know that's something that I've struggled with too. And he talks about how we struggle with the idea of life not going on anymore, right? So once we die, that's kind of it, and we don't know if we'll leave everything we own to a fool or if that person will be wise. And sometimes a wise person is scorned and a foolish person is elevated, and sometimes the fastest runner doesn't win the race, and sometimes in the place of righteousness there's wickedness, right? These are all things that we can relate to. And the author of Ecclesiastes, he gives us this way to cope with these situations, right? So he says, look, this is the way life actually is. It's turned upside down. It's messed up. Things are not good, right? In this post-fall, post-sin world. And he says, here's something you can do in light of all of that, in light of all these things that you can't control, that don't make sense. If God allows you to, you can take joy in four things, right, that are related to what Adam and Eve experienced in the Garden of Eden. You can take joy in work, you can take joy in food, you can take joy in your spouse, and you can take joy in wine. Okay, so he says these four things you should embrace if God allows you to. And he offers a counterpoint too, right? The counterpoint is fearing God. Because there are two sides to each of these things, right? If we take work, we can work too much and make that our God and become a workaholic, or on the other side, we can be lazy, right? So those are the two distortions of work. For wine, we can be complete teetotalers, like I am, and never enjoy wine at all. I'll talk about why I am a teetotaler some other time. If you're interested, email me. Or we can take too much wine and become a drunkard, right? So there's two opposite extremes on that issue. With enjoying your spouse, right? You can take joy and pleasure in your relationship with your spouse, and that can be a good and a great and a wonderful thing. Or on the other hand, you can be like my own father was, an adulterer, right? Take joy in too many spouses. You know what I'm saying? And then let's see. Sorry, I lost my train. Food, work, food. You can use food as a way to drown out your sorrows. That's something I've struggled with, is using food as a coping mechanism. Becoming a glutton, eating too much, or on the other hand, you can use it as a way a way to control things, right? You can say, well, I can't control anything else in life, but I can control this one thing, what I eat, right? And there's an extreme on both ends. But Ecclesiastes points us to this middle way to say, like, look, these are gifts God has given, and we can take joy in those gifts and receive pleasure from those gifts. And yet, he also cautions we have to fear God, right? So we have to enjoy God's gifts within the boundaries God has established, right? And I think that's one of the main benefits of the book of Ecclesiastes, is he's saying, look, things are really messed up. And I know if you're watching this, you can understand that, right? What's today is June 4th. So we are in phase one of reopening the United States right now after the pandemic that who knows when that's going to finally be over. We've seen significant amount of death, and people have been afraid and locked down, and the economy has struggled. And then we're also in the midst of mass protests around the country against police brutality and violence. And so we see these things and say, man, like, yeah, the world is absolutely messed up. And there's a place and a time for engaging our wider culture and saying, like, this stuff is not okay. Like, I am for that, and yet Also, one way to kind of navigate this, to maintain some semblance of sanity in our own hearts, is to take pleasure in the things that God has given us, to enjoy the gifts, enjoy time with our families, enjoy good food, enjoy the work that God has given us, right? Those are key ways that we can, in the midst of turmoil and frustration and things that don't make sense, those are key ways that we can demonstrate a countercultural approach to life and say, yes, these things are messed up, right? That's what Ecclesiastes does. He says, these situations are not right. It's not okay. And then he also says, in light of these things, here are some things you can do. You can take joy in these gifts that God has given. And so I guess that's my that's my takeaway from those sections of the book, those carpe diem passages, is life is strange and confusing, and sometimes we don't understand what God is doing or sometimes even who God is. But if he allows us to take joy in the things that he's given us and these gifts that we have for a moment, and not forever, like a steak doesn't last, right? We should take pleasure in those and rejoice in the God who gave them.